Good evening again. Welcome back to Friendship Baptist Church. I'm going to do another evening update. Beginning next week, we're going to kind of cut these down more than likely to just a handful of times a week besides our regular services. Y'all excuse me, my phone's going off. I thought I'd taken care of that a while ago anyway, but got that taken care of now. But anyway, we'll be on looking forward to tomorrow, a little bit before 11, our Easter service is going to be a great service. I'm excited about it. I hope our people will be tuned in. If you don't get to watch it live, that you will get to watch it, be praying for it. There's going to be a lot of people watching. There's more people now hearing the gospel. That's what's amazing to me. There are more people worldwide hearing the gospel through this pandemic, what it's forced the change of how we're reaching people. And it's not just, here in America. Worldwide, more people are hearing the gospel. And of course, they're having to hear it oftentimes through the media, as we're doing today, and have been doing now for the last few weeks. But be praying all across America that as God would bless in the world, God would bless servants of His to stand and speak the truth boldly regarding our Lord Jesus Christ. Before we look in the Word of God tonight in 2 Kings, kind of follow up a thought from last evening, just want to share some general information. The news at this Easter is really not good. Overall with COVID-19, in the sense there's over 500,000 people in the United States we know that have this. We passed the 2,000 deaths a day mark a few days ago, and so that is that's very, very serious. There's just a lot of misery and a lot of heartache in the world, and it may not be touching you and I directly, but indirectly and certainly around the globe it is. A lot of you want to know about Miss Debbie Isaacs. Miss Debbie got her test results back late last night. It came back negative, but the doctors are still treating her as if she has the COVID-19. They are considering that it may be a false negative due to her symptoms and things, but they're looking at some heart issues and stuff. I know Brother David, Miss Debbie, Jeremy and Jenny and their families greatly appreciate the prayers that God's people have given for them and will continue to give. Brother Brian called me today. Miss Donna is doing better. They don't know if she has COVID-19 because unless your symptoms are very, very serious, you're not getting tested for it. But she's doing better today. So, again, they give their best wishes to the church family. Excuse me, and thank you for praying for them. Now, rural areas, one thing I've noticed observation, at least in this country, and we hope it'll continue to bear out, but rural areas seem to be faring better, and rural states, for the most part, faring better than urban areas. This is to be expected. Some of the research that's been done on this is very clear that when you're in a closed space, a tighter place with air circulating, there's a higher risk of transmission. In fact, the risk is 18.7 times higher when you're in an enclosed environment. So that is something to consider. But right now, Arkansas, of course, we have a lot of people in our state that have tested positive, and many more have the virus, just haven't tested yet, but and may never test if they have mild symptoms, of course. But anyway, what we're doing in the state, we want to keep on doing it. There was a little bit of news, and you know me, I like news, geology, astronomy, weather, meteorology, all kind of things. A little bit of news caught my eye last evening, and I thought, oh my goodness, as I saw something come across my timeline, that an island, a volcano in Indonesia between Java and Sumatra in the Sandu Strait had erupted. And this is none other than the famous Krakatoa, is how it used to be called. Krakatoa is how it's pronounced now, I believe, the native name for it. But this is the volcano that erupted on August 27th, 1883, with the loudest, most cataclysmic violence that's been known in mankind's history. I'm not saying there may not have been, some more, but this one was so great. It was so great that the shock wave of it was recorded circling the globe multiple times. This was heard 2,000 miles away in Perth, Australia, and other places. It was an incredible explosion, and it filled the atmosphere with so much ash and things like that, that it actually caused cooling on the earth for a significant and rather long time. Now, when I saw this, I thought, my goodness, this thing's erupting again. But the more I got to realize, and it's been a very active volcano for quite a while. In fact, 2 years ago, it erupted, and it had grown, I forget, about 900 to 1,000 feet. The cone of it had grown up, and all of that was blown away about 2 years ago. But anyway, just a lot of activity around the world, and that caught my attention. Just one quick warning. Hopefully, we will not have too severe weather tomorrow, but there is a continued likelihood for some violent storms to the southeast of us, southeastern half of Arkansas, particularly into Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama. And if you have any loved ones, any family, any friends down that way, they're probably already aware, but don't chance it. Make sure that they're aware, and we'll be keeping an eye on it for them. Now, just some quick observations just from our church family and just people I've got a chance to correspond with, either in person or phone, text, email, whatever. Everybody's missing, for the most part. There might be one or two of you hermits that's loving this, being apart, but most people are really missing being together. And one thing my wife and I have noticed, not only everybody misses, getting together, the camaraderie and just being able to talk to somebody, shake hands. I know Donald Trump, President Trump, he doesn't like shaking hands. He wants it done with forever. Man, I've grown up shaking people's hands. When I pulled up Brother Finley's yesterday, he got off his tractor. He'd been mowing, and Brother Larry took his glove off and reached his hand out for shake hands. I said, Brother Larry, we better not do that now. He said, yeah. He said, we better not. And so that's hard for me to get used to, but at least we're getting around to see you. But the ladies of our church, especially, it seems like the young mothers are really, really missing a lot of fellowship. And we have seen that and noticed that. Well, today we got a treat. I got off the mower this afternoon just in time to see a white van pull up in my home. And it was Philip and Tina Hogan and the boys. And surprised us with a visit. It was so good to see them. So I got my wife, and we got out in the yard and just visited and talked for a good bit. Then we went over to my mom's, and they got to see Mom. And they wanted to see just, they're fairly new to our church like some of you are, and don't know where everybody lives. Of course, we didn't get to see everybody, but we did go by and see the Van Diemens and Miss Cindy Fell, and from there to Jeremy and Brenda's place, and then Brother George and Miss Sherry, then to Seth and Sarah's. And so we got to make a few rounds, and it was just a joy to see our folks get to fellowship a little bit. And but we could see in the eyes of our ladies that when they had visitors pull up, as Miss Brenda Isaacs put it so well, people, real people have come to our house. So hopefully you'll get to see some real people and continue to be encouraged. I've noticed too last day or two, it seems like more people are taking serious the preparations and the separation and wearing masks and things like that out in public. This is a sober note. Of course, our president and our leaders need a lot of prayer. Think about this. Okay, if our president says, all right, on May 1st, the economy is going to go, we're going to open it back up and whatever. Well, the opposition, whichever side he takes on something, they're going to take the opposite, no matter what. They're going to say, well, he chose the economy over lives. Well, then if he waits too long to say we can kind of go back, they're going to say he's ruined everybody's life. This is a very hard decision that he has to make, and for the first time in American history today, he declared all 50 states a disaster area, and that's a very sobering thing to think about. And there's something that I saw that really just stuck in my mind, imagination. I never thought I would see in my life in the United States of America, and that was a mass grave. And some of you may have seen the same footage out of New York City. And I guess these poor people that are dying are indigent. Some of them are immigrants. They don't have family. One of the components of the COVID-19 that is showing up around the world is, and it's not understood fully, is there's a genetic aspect. And it seems to be hitting certain groups of people harder than others. And scientists are studying this, but I know in New York City a lot of immigrants there, a lot of people work in various the taxi drivers. I forget how many taxi drivers in New York City have died of COVID-19, but it's a pretty significant number. Well, anyway, apparently a lot of these people don't have family, friends, whatever for a funeral, and there's these big trenches dug, and I mean it's just one coffin, just a plain little coffin on top of each other. And I mean, they're using a forklift to carry in these coffins, and it's just a sobering thing to see. And if you or anyone else says, well, Again, I'm kind of getting tired of this because I don't think it's apples to apples and oranges to oranges. People say, well, this is no different than the flu and X number of people are dying or whatever. Let me give you some figures from New York City in the first week of April, the first full week of April. 1,100 people, that's over 1,000 people, 1,100 people were found dead either in the streets, on sidewalks, or in their homes. And you say, well, it's a big city, millions of people. What's surprising about that? It's 8 times more than this time a year ago and a previous year. It's not the same, people. It's taken, I know these people, a lot of them have comorbidities, things already, underlying health issues, but that's just very sobering to me. And let's just pray that God will continue to be with our healthcare workers, that He'll sustain them. Abram and Ruth are not only in an extreme tight lockdown, it's even got tighter today. Someone in their neighborhood violated curfew. The police came to them. Normally, Brother Abram, today would be a day he could have got out for 2 hours, and he was getting food for his people and just trying to do things any pastor would do in an hour like this. But because of these people that have gotten out, the police said everything, nobody's getting out of their home till next Tuesday. So pray for them. But Abram sent me a long list of nurses and doctors there in Panama now that are suffering from the virus, just like we have healthcare workers here in the States. He sent me pictures. He's a police chaplain. He sent me pictures of 2 young men, the police officers there, that are 2 that have died. And it's really having a tremendous impact, not just here in the States, but all over the world. And that's just one little picture of it. Now, I want to come back to our thought this evening, and I want to try to make this pretty brief here. But we left the thought last evening in 2 Kings chapter 3. And if you remember, in our narrative, there was 3 men. There was Jehoram, who was the king of Israel, Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, and the king of Edom. And they had come, alliance together to come against the king of Moab. Well, nevertheless, they got down in the valley of Edom, got below the Dead Sea area, a very arid area, and they had their armies, but they were without water. And you're not going to do much good fighting or even live without water. And so, paraphrase a little bit here, they came to Elisha. Someone said, we need to talk to a man of God. And they came to Elisha, and Elisha rebuked Jehoram severely, and we dealt with that yesterday. He said, I won't even look at you. I would not even regard that you're in my presence. But Jehoshaphat, I will. And so Elisha called for a minstrel to come, play some music, and to calm his heart. And then he gave a word from the Lord. In verse 16, he said, Thus saith the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. For thus saith the Lord, ye shall not see wind, neither shall you see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, that you may drink both ye and your cattle and your beast. And this is but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. He will deliver the Moabites also into your hand. And what God's servant simply told him is this: dig some ditches. Now, there were probably some old dry water courses and water beds there are in that part of the world. My wife and I had the privilege of being in Israel, I think it was 2011, and we got to travel to the Dead Sea area, and it is a wasteland, but you can see where, when they do get their rare rains, that there'll be a dry water course there. I think in the western United States we'd call those arroyos, or like a gully, or dry wash. But he said, I want you to dig ditches. So maybe they cleaned out those and then dug ditches like canals out from them. But boy, that sounds so counterintuitive, does it not, to be in an arid, dry place, no water, no way in the world that you're going to dig a well. And God's man says, dig ditches? But you know what? They began to dig ditches. And you can read there in 2 Kings chapter 3 the rest of the story. And God told them, said, you're not going to see the wind, and you're not going to see the rain, you're not going to see any of that. What God was saying, he said, you're not going to see my hand at work. But behind the scenes, I'm going to be working for you. And there's going to be water come, and it's going to travel down through that arid wilderness. And it's going to fill those ditches. And it's going to fill those canals that you're digging. And it did. And not only did it provide water for the men and for their beasts of the armies, but the next day, the king of Moab and his armies, they looked off in there. I wish I had a way to show you the picture of how arid and rugged that country is. But a lot of the soil and a lot of the rock is a real reddish color, not unlike Arizona and parts of American West. But that morning, when they looked over, they were not expecting to see water. And they didn't think it was water. They could just see that red glare coming off where all those ditches that were full of water, where God's people had dug them. And the king of Moab saw that. And his generals and captains saw that. And they discerned and said, that's the blood. That's the blood of the Israelites. That's the blood of Judah. They've been slaughtered. Let's go down and take the spoil. And so they let their guard down and they walked right into a trap. And God gave a victory there. And God delivered Jehoram and Jehoshaphat, the king of Edom, and delivered the Moabites into their hand. Now the thought that I want you and I to take, it's a principle, is that thought of digging ditches. Digging ditches. You know, you and I don't know how God is going to deliver America or the world through the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't know when, how. We don't know if it's coming back a second wave in the late summer, fall, winter. We don't know what's going to transpire. Now, we have a lot of people, including ourselves, who are armchair quarterbacks. We're giving our thoughts on it. Or as one fellow said, we're all armchair epidemiologists now, giving our 2 cents worth. The fact is, we don't know how God's going to work. But I want you to know this. It's a principle of the Word of God, that God's people are to have a living faith. Not a dead faith, not a dormant faith, not a lazy faith. But you and I need to be digging ditches of faith in this hour to prepare our hearts for God to do something. How are you praying right now? Are you pouring your heart out before the Lord in intercession? I'm not just praying, oh Lord, kill the virus. Lord, deliver us from the virus. But I'm talking about, are you talking to your Father which is in heaven? Are you communicating your love and your heart for Him, your respect and your reverence? I'm not saying it's not wrong to ask for God to deliver. Certainly we want that. But we ought more than anything to want the heart of God, to dig some ditches of faith. You know, it didn't even dawn on me till we almost got to Brother Jeremy and Miss Brenda's house today. But as we turned into Cherokee Village, and the Hogan family was following us in their van, I just told my wife, I said, I'm going to take them by and show them where we lived the first 2 years. We turned off on my Canopy Drive, and we pulled up. The little house is empty where Miss Peggy and I and all of our kids lived there for a little over 2 years. And I motioned out the window for Philip and Tina to kind of pull up alongside there. And I just shared with them very briefly, I said, when we moved to Arkansas, we had nowhere to put our furniture. We had nowhere, we had no job. We had nothing. We didn't know anybody. But I pointed to this little house. I said, this is where God planted us. And I began to tell them how that God allowed our family to learn what the faith life was all about. I told them how that we would gather, and I pointed to where the dining room was, and I said we would gather literally around that kitchen table, not figuratively, but literally on our knees, and pray for our daily bread. I pointed to a place down in the woods, and I said there's a hickory tree down there that I spent hours and hours praying and pouring my heart out to the Lord. I didn't know what I was doing. We didn't know how we were going to make it. We had no concept of what God's given us today at Friendship. But you know what we were doing? It was a lean time in our lives. It was a challenging time. We had no friends here. We had no family. There was nothing. But we were digging ditches. We were preparing for a day that God might let some rain fall far away, and that our lives might be watered. And He blessed it. Let me just ask you this. How about dig the ditch of rejoicing in this hour? This is a trial. Sure, it's a trial. It's a sterner trial for some than others. But let's dig the ditch of rejoicing. Let's rejoice not just in triumph, but let's rejoice in trial, in challenge, in difficulty. And let me encourage you something else. How about digging the ditch of relationships? When we get out of this pandemic, we get out of this separation period and things are freed up, what's your heart and spirit going to be like? Number one, what's your relationship with your Father who is in heaven? What's your relationship with Him going to be like? Are you going to be a son and daughter that can come back and you can stand here on our platform and give a testimony on a Sunday or a Wednesday and just tell what great things God hath done? Or are you getting sour, getting bitter because you're not able to come together? Sow the seeds of relationship. Dig the ditches of relationship. My wife had a great observation today. As we've noticed, not just in today's visits, but other visits, I mentioned how much especially our ladies, enjoy seeing each other, even if it's just briefly for a few moments, and families getting together. And as we were pulling away from the Isaacs home, heading towards the Smiths, she made this statement. She said, you know, our ladies are going to be able to understand more what it's like to be a missionary wife. When you're in an alien culture, and you don't even speak the language, and there's nobody but you and your husband, and you can't just load the kids up and go to the park, or load the kids up and go to Walmart, or do whatever. You know, it's a great time right now to dig some ditches of relationship with our missionaries and just reach out to people. It's so easy to do. You know the reason we don't do it? We just don't take the time. But God's given us, that's one thing He's given us all now. He's given us a little time. And let's dig the ditch of redemption for those that don't know Christ. How are you going to use, how is God using you during this time to reach out to the lost and those without Christ? Are you trying to be innovative in your thinking, lost loved ones, lost friends, lost family? Let's ask God to help us dig the ditch of redemption. In summary, let me just say this. Let's come together tomorrow to worship Him in spirit and in truth. The grave is still empty. The stone's been rolled away. Our Lord Jesus Christ is at the right hand of the Father, and He still has provided redemption for all who believe. We have so much to rejoice in. I love you. Looking forward to fellowshipping tomorrow. Have a good evening, and we'll have a great Lord's Day tomorrow.